What's going on? It's your boy APFC. Apologies for the late video today. I was watching the Conor McGregor fight, and yeah, I've had a bit more time to dissect the game. 1-1 draw it ended up, as you probably would have seen in my prediction. I went with a 2-1 Arsenal win. Clearly didn't turn out that way, and again, a performance really lacking that final quality. There was some positive aspects in the game. However, we just didn't have that concentration. Concentration being one of the key words that not just I've spoken about, but Arteta has spoken about, saying that we need to focus for 90 minutes. We need to keep that shape, keep that mentality. And I think shape-wise, we are definitely keeping it. I think defensively, we're looking a lot better than we ever have over the last 2 to 3 years. And really, that's a lot of credit for Mikel Arteta to be able to make that much improvement since he's been in. But what I've noticed is that when we have balanced out we've balanced out the team in some respects. Now that we're probably conceding less goals, we're not creating enough chances, and we're not scoring as many. Now, you could argue that Aubameyang wasn't available, so that takes out, well, it's 49% that he's got of our Premier League goals this season. I don't think that's a good enough excuse. There was enough good quality players on the field to be able to create chances, and we simply just didn't really create the sort of chances that I was looking to create. First 15 minutes, Sheffield were all over us. We did ride that wave very well. I did think over time that the more that they sort of had that high intensity pressing, the more they'll tire. They started to tire after the 15-20 minute mark. We had a good 15 to 20 minute spell after that, where ultimately Saka went down the wing, who I thought had an excellent game, by the way. Crossed it in, a slight deflection. But as we discussed with Martinelli, he is a box-to-box poacher, and it shows again. He's been playing on the left, but the right place, right time was there, and ultimately finished it 4-1-0. Now, the second half, I thought we sort of didn't really... we lacked that killer instinct again. We didn't really look to kill the game off. We weren't actively, we weren't moving the ball quick enough. We were looking pretty good defensively, but we just couldn't really find that killer edge. And this has been the story of Arteta's reign so far, is that he's not been able to kill games off where it really matters. I do think that it's a lot of it is down to a fitness, a lot of it is down to mentality. But we just seem to lack that sort of creativeness in the midfield. Mesut Ozil, again, putting in a 1 out of 4 game good performances. Yeah, he put a good one against Man United in, but he'll put on an average one against Leeds, put an average one against Crystal Palace, and put another average performance against Sheffield. I do think Ozil in the second half was actually quite decent, was one of our better players, but at the end of the day, you have to have these high expectations of him. He's on $350K a week. He is one of the most high-profile playmakers in the history of the game in respects to the amount of attention that he gets. But he hasn't really performed for the last 3 years, and he's definitely not performed this season. Has his glimpses, but again, against some of those so-called lesser sides, he just can't get up for the game. And there was a few misplaced passes. There was one to Martinelli on the wing, which he just completely overhit. And he does, in this respects, make the midfield tick better. He was coming deeper to receive the ball, and we were moving the ball a little bit more fluidly in the midfield, but ultimately he should be up there creating for the front three, and he just wasn't able to do that. I want to give a bit of a shout out to David Luiz, because he has by far been our best player since Arteta has come in. By far. I mean, the way that he has turned his game around has been mind-blowing in respects to, first of all, when I thought he came in, I thought that this guy has passed it. He's not going to offer much defensively. He might put in a good through ball and score a banger every now and then, but at the end of the day, he's not what we need. God, I'm starting to think differently now, because he has a very experienced head who is really keeping his cool. I mean, he's performing better than I've seen him perform for Chelsea. I don't know. I mean, I've seen David Luiz play for Chelsea when I've watched certain games, but I don't really know exactly what he's been like over a whole course of a season, because I don't watch all the Chelsea's games. But from my perspective, this is one of the best I've seen David Luiz play. He's a lot more disciplined with when he's deciding to make the tackle. He's like a very calming influence, and it seems to be able to calm the rest of the defenders down, particularly when you have a defensive wing backs of Maitland-Niles and Saka. Not a lot of experience, but he tends to calm things down, and we tend to look a lot more settled in that area. For me, it showed again why Lucas Torreira is invaluable to this squad. Lucas Torreira offers that sort of midfield assuredness. He offers that defensive capability that we don't have from any other midfielder. You do see the difference. You see the difference of the second half against Crystal Palace, where we really couldn't win the midfield battle. When Torreira's there, we don't look like losing it defensively. Offensively is another story, but defensively, we don't look like losing it when Torreira is there. It seems to make Granit Xhaka a better player. I did say that in one of my earlier videos, that Granit Xhaka is best next to Lucas Torreira when he has a screening midfielder. And you would have seen again today of Arteta's tactics of Torreira sitting just in front of the defenders, with Xhaka sort of bouncing from wing to wing, linking up with those midfield players, and looking to eventually play that ball between the lines. And Torreira, again, seen for me, I thought he was man of the match, to be honest with you. He did pretty much most things right. He looks very defensively assured. He was actually bringing the ball up quite a lot as well. And, positive signs in the respects of how we're looking defensively. But going back to what I was saying before, offensively seems to be a big problem. When Nicolas Pepe got the ball, he too often was looking to take on defenders. Now, I've said in previous defenders that Nicolas Pepe, we should be letting him and giving him a bit more leeway to take on defenders, which I think is true. We really should be giving him that bit more time and patience. But at the end of the day, he's having to take on the wing backs too much because there is not enough options for him in the middle. He gets the ball and he's often left isolated on the wing. And I just don't think with how we're setting up, we're not maximising the potential of our wingers. Yeah, we saw it with that one game with Pepe where he absolutely rinsed Luke Shaw. But as I said to you in the preview, the game will be won out wide, and I just don't think we maximised the out wide areas offensively. I think defensively we handled it pretty well. We didn't really give him too many chances. I mean, Xhaka did clear one off the line, but generally speaking, we didn't really give him that many chances, and that is a massive positive for us, particularly of how open that we've looked at home, especially towards the end of Emery's reign at Arsenal. But yeah, as I was saying, Pepe couldn't get in the game. I thought Martinelli obviously finished his chance well, being at the right place, right time, but I just don't think we really utilised him that well either. He didn't really have that space to bomb down the wing like I was expecting, and he didn't really cut in like I was expecting. But I do think that is because we're quite predictable in respects that we're trying to go out wide and cross it in every time. We didn't really have that sort of playmaker, which is Mesut Ozil's role, looking for that sort of through ball into Lacazette. Lacazette, man, I'm telling you, that is probably one of the worst performances I've seen him play for Arsenal. You might say that's harsh, but at least with the Palace game, a lot of the other things he was trying was working, apart from scoring goals. He didn't even look like creating any chances. He's completely in the wrong positions. For a striker that, when he came to Arsenal, I thought this guy is a goal poacher. He's a in the box sort of specialist. He always is in the right positions. That guy looks nowhere positionally, absolutely nowhere, and I just wonder exactly what's going on with him at the moment. I just wonder if his head has been turned by any other potential clubs, or he's just not really enjoying his football. But there is an interesting sort of change in Lacazette's mentality that I've noticed this season in comparison to previous seasons gone. I just think that he seems to be struggling with the pressure, and yeah, a lot of it is down to the fact that he's not in good form, but particularly with Aubameyang being out, he's struggling with this pressure of being the man to have to score the goals. But at the end of the day, someone needs to step up, and I don't think he took the responsibility. I thought Pepe tried. He tried to take responsibility in the game, but it just wasn't working for him. Pepe, I'm hoping, sort of can get some more consistency, because he seems to be one of those players that is similar to Ozil, where we're putting one very good performance out of 3 to 4 at the moment. We need him to perform consistently. This is our record signing. He needs to start at least creating more chances for our forwards, because he doesn't seem to be doing that. But I do think structurally that is an issue with our midfield. It's because we have two defensive-minded midfielders, although Xhaka likes to get forward. He doesn't have the pace to really offer that sort of dynamic touch in respects to taking players on and running at defenders, although he does a lot more of it now. Mesut Ozil is not a goal scorer. Mesut Ozil doesn't even create anymore. So you have this whole midfield issue where defensively we look more sound. And it's just going forward. We need that box-to-box midfielder to really link up with our wide players and our forwards. Mesut Ozil's definitely not that player, and Granit Xhaka certainly is not either. He's more of an anchor role, and we saw that throughout the game yesterday. I'm going to go through player ratings. I'm going to basically touch on all the players, give them a rating out of 10. I'm going to start with Leno. Leno was really relatively, didn't relatively do anything really. He's sort of same old with Leno over the last few games. Hasn't really been tested, which is a good thing considering he was the most shots against him in the Premier League this season. I think he still is. His distribution probably wasn't as good as it was against Palace. So I'm just going to give Leno probably a simple 5. Saka. Now, I thought Saka, alongside another player, was man of the match. I'm probably going to give Saka a... Actually, no, I don't think he was man of the match. I thought he was second. Probably going to give Saka a 7.5. I thought first half he was man of the match, the way he was bombing down the left-hand side and linking up with their attack. There was one particular moment where I think Sheffield just won possession in the midfield, in the centre of the midfield, and Saka ran from the left-hand side in the first half to eventually sort of shoulder charge him out of the way and ultimately win possession. It's that sort of hunger that we need, and I have a lot of respect for the young players. They really seem to understand what it means to wear the shirt, and Saka is no exception to that. He was putting in some decent crosses. He was looking to link up with our midfielders, particularly in that 20-minute spell in the first half. And the end of the first half, we were looking dominant. Saka was really starting to, he was a reason of why we were looking dominant down that left-hand side. So I've got a lot of respect for that. It's a 7.5 for me. Socrates. Sorry, not Socrates. He didn't play. Mustafi. My apologies. He was a bit shaky in the first half. He sort of had that moment where he fiddled around with the ball in the first half and he ultimately lost possession near our box. So I think it was near the touchline. Not sure what he was thinking there. However, he did bounce back. He had a much better performance. I still feel Mustafi, he needs to stop trying to play that miracle ball. He needs to stop because the guy tries a Zidane pass every single time, and it's one of the things that's really frustrated with Mustafi since he's been at Arsenal. Especially the last 5 minutes, the last few minutes, he tried to pass and he just gave it away. And I'm like, what are you doing, mate? It's not good enough. And he really needs to stop playing that miracle pass. But generally speaking, I think Mustafi and Luiz, they held it together well in the centre defence. The goal, I don't think, was any of their faults. I think Maitland-Niles probably put out a lazy sort of leg for that goal. But defensively, we look a lot more responsible there, and a lot of that comes from David Luiz, but I thought Mustafi was decent. He timed most of his tackles well, and they handled the high ball very well, because I know Sheffield do like a long ball at times. And most importantly, they handled the impending threat of the press that Sheffield do like to play. They like to obviously have overlapping centre-backs, and their two strikers and their centre midfielders press very, very high. So I thought they handled that quite well, actually. So for me, Mustafi would get a 6.5, probably, decent, but nothing too special. For me, David Luiz gets a 7. I thought David Luiz, very close to a 7.5. If I'm giving Saka a 7.5, I'm going to give David Luiz a 7.5 as well, actually. Again, our most calm and composed player on the field. He always finds the man with his long balls out wide. He was winning tackles. He was looking a lot more assured when getting pressed. He wasn't rash. And to make Mustafi look more assured at the back is a positive for me. And I really think he has proper leadership qualities at the club. And I do think the other players look up to David Luiz as that sort of leader position. For me, very easily gets a 7.5. I thought he was on par with Saka, actually. Who have I missed? Maitland-Niles. Maitland-Niles was not as good as he was against Palace, although he was probably more untested. Didn't really offer much going forward. I think in the second half he looked a lot more threatening. He started to get into the game more because he was a bit lost in the first half. I didn't really notice him on the field. Didn't really do anything great deal wrong either. But look, as the wing-backs, you got to get a bit more involved. And if Maitland-Niles really wants to make that position his own, he really needs to offer more going forward. Although he's a lot better defensively than Bellerin, you could argue Bellerin offers a lot more with sort of probably his pace and the timing of his runs. Maitland-Niles can knuckle that down. He is by far our best starting right back. I still think he is now. But to add another element to his game, he's got to offer a lot more going forward. So for me, he gets just a 6. He didn't really do anything in particularly wrong, but he didn't do anything exceptional either. Sort of was in the peripheral, is in the background of the game. Granit Xhaka. I thought Granit Xhaka in the first half was quiet, but not anything too terrible either. He didn't really get into the game that much. Second half, at the beginning of the half, he was looking a lot more threatening. We had that period in the second half where we started to be a lot more dominant and hold the ball and play nice patterns in the midfield. Xhaka is playing the ball nicely still. He's winning more tackles, but he still lacks that pace. Now, Granit Xhaka has performed better, but I don't think this guy is going to be the answer, particularly with the way we like to play. We are lacking that midfielder that can get forward and offer more threat up top. Xhaka, to be fair to him, he's never been that midfielder. I don't think we signed him to be that midfielder either, as like a box-to-box, but he just doesn't seem to be offering too much going forward, but he's solid enough defensively. He was giving away a lot of fouls again. He was getting caught on possession at times, but he's getting a lot better. But I just don't. I think, if we really want to move forward as a club, particularly complementing Arteta's system, I do genuinely believe we need another midfielder like a Frank Kessie to be that more box to box, to be a bit more dynamic, to be a bit more alert. We need that sort of midfield to go to the next level, and it would really complement Lucas Torreira. Xhaka, I'm going to give a Granit Xhaka, probably a 6 again. Wasn't great, wasn't terrible, but probably just about average. Probably maybe closer to a 5, but I'll give him a 6 today. Lucas Torreira, I thought, was man of the match again. He was man of the match for me against Palace when he was playing in the first half. We need this guy. Now, a lot of people were losing patience with Torreira when he wasn't playing as well. Torreira, for me, is one of the best defensive midfielders in the Premier League on his day. Yeah, he had 4 to 5 months towards the end of the season last year where he wasn't performing after a blistering start. But under Arteta, and he is under Arteta and under a more thriving structure that Arteta is building, Lucas Torreira suits that. Now, when we were playing under Emery, there was a lot of confusion and disorganisation in the midfield, and I think that is why Lucas Torreira often was caught pushing forward at times. I think that a lot of it was down to Emery wanting him to push forward, and he was looking a lot more lost positionally. Now that we look more structured, Lucas Torreira looks like twice the player that he did at the end of the Emery era. He was winning tackles. Again, what Torreira does well is that he gets to the back of an attacker as quickly as he possibly can to get them to turn around and face their own goal. Torreira was doing that. He was winning a lot of tackles. He was actually moving the ball forward quite a lot more, and he was taking a lot more responsibility, which I really liked with Torreira. And, our midfield is a massive problem, but generally speaking, we can really move forward if we can find that one player to complement Torreira, because Torreira is starting to look like a valuable player in the Arteta system. We just need someone a little bit more dynamic next to him. Nothing too against Granit Xhaka, although he's been pretty bang average in his Arsenal career. We just need someone better. And it says it all that when Xhaka was linked to move, and Arteta ended up convincing him to stay, the clubs that went in for him were Hertha Berlin and Werder Bremen. They're not exactly big clubs. That is his level. He is not Arsenal centre midfield quality. If we want to push for that top 4, we need someone more dynamic with him. But Granit Xhaka for me was a 6, and Torreira I would give an 8. I think he deserved an 8. Probably the only one of our players that did. Martinelli, I don't think it was one of Martinelli's greatest ever performances. He couldn't really get in the game. I thought actually out wide they handled us pretty well defensively. He was looking to take players on, but I found Martinelli had to come short too often to be able to get the ball, and a lot of that is down to our sort of possession and the way we move the ball in the midfield, which we haven't quite mastered yet under Arteta. He just couldn't seem to get in the game. Our wingers have tended to be too predictable with taking it down the wing and not looking to cut in and shoot. We're not really, and because we don't really have our playmaker making those runs into the box, we don't have a centre midfield making the run into the box, it sort of leaves a lack of options for our wingers. They're not able to play that through ball in by a player making an ongoing run into the box. So it sort of leaves our wingers basically only taking players on. That's all they can really do. Maybe play it back to the midfield, but nothing too threatening. And that was the problem for Martinelli today. I would have given Martinelli a 6, but because he scored the goal, I'll give him a 6.5. But I just don't think he did a lot today. And I think he really struggled to get in the game. But he is young, and fair play to him. He stepped up when he had to, and he got the goal for us with being, again, that poacher instinct in the right place, right time. Something I mentioned in a previous video. If you haven't gone and check it out, the one I did about Martinelli. Who am I going to do next? Nicolas Pepe. Nicolas Pepe, he tried. He did try. He put in a lot more of a work rate than I think he did against Palace, but it didn't work for him. I think he was one of our players that gave away the ball the most. And although he had some tricky moments in the first half where I think he got pressed sort of near our halfway line and he sort of beat two players with ease, he can hit that consistency, and I generally believe he can hit that level where he can beat players 90% of the time, but he just needs to fix that mentality. He tried to take the game by the scruff of the neck at points by taking players on. I did notice, towards moments in the second half where things were looking a little bit dull and Sheffield were looking to get back into the game. Pepe did try to take the game by the scruff of the neck, come back, win the ball, try to take players on, but he just didn't have the support around him, and I think a lot of that comes down to the midfield. He thrived in the Lille system, which basically allowed him to run at players more with more supporting options as they played a more counter-attack style, which relied on his pace of beating players and then using his pace to either get past one player, not have to get past 4 or 5 when he's coming too deep into midfield. And I just don't think we have found a system to complement our wingers yet. Not under Emery, not under Arteta. That's something Arteta's going to have to work on. For me, yeah, Pepe did try, but he didn't really do much, and he lost the ball a lot, so I'm probably going to have to give a Pepe 5.5. Mesut Ozil. Again, as I said before, he is missing in some of these games, and I did think the second half he was probably one of our best players, but he just goes missing. He doesn't press too much. He doesn't offer what we need from him. He's coming back and he is making things look a little bit more fluid at the center of the midfield, but that's not his role. His role is to create for our front three, and right now, he just doesn't seem to be able to get himself into positions to be able to do so. He doesn't seem to be able to find that final pass. When he does have the final pass, he doesn't seem to be converting. He wasn't able to link up with Lacazette. Positionally in the midfield with regards to Mesut Ozil, Lacazette, they're all over the place positionally. And I just think Ozil is not really offering much, really. And he, all these loyal fanboys will get their knickers in a twist when he performs 1 out of 5 games, but he's not doing it consistently. And we can't not talk about what he's on money-wise, because the reason why we can only loan players is we have players, particularly like Ozil, that are sitting there taking $350K a week. And this is why we can't move on, and this is why we can't spend big on a marquee player, because right now we are missing a box-to-box midfielder and we are missing a creative midfielder, and we don't currently have that, and I don't think we can really progress as a side until we address those key areas. And I'm hoping this makes us dip into the window, and I'm really hoping that, we can at least address one of those areas. I don't think Ozil will be leaving this window, but at least maybe bring another player in to compete with Xhaka and ultimately replace him, because I do think at some point Xhaka will leave next window. So Ozil, for me, will get a 5.5. Yeah, 5.5. Worst player on the field for me, unfortunately, was Lacazette. Now, I do like his effort. I don't think he put in as much effort as he did against Palace. He seems extremely, extremely low on confidence, whereas he looked lost at moments in the second half before he got taken off. He knew that he couldn't really do anything, and he just looked like, as the game went on, he just looked less likely. He looked less confident in himself, and things just weren't really going too well for him. And yeah, he just didn't really offer too much, and I just don't think he really, it just not really going for him. He needs to find his confidence, because I'll tell you what, if he doesn't really hit this form towards the end of the season, I think Arteta will look to sell him. It will be interesting to see whether he's looking to leave anyway. Maybe his attitude's changed because his head's been turned, but yeah, I don't know. He just seems to be completely off with the fairies at the moment. Going to give him probably a 4. Just don't think he did anything today worthy, and it was one of his poorest performances I've actually seen this season, or perhaps in an Arsenal shirt. Eddie Nketiah came on. He tried to take on players, but he seemed to be a man struggling with the fact that he came from the Championship into the Premier League. It's a bit of an adjustment to make. He just didn't really seem to do too much for us. Probably the other subs I'm not really going to judge because they weren't on the field for really that long. But yeah, Nketiah tried. I'll probably give him a 5. Didn't really do much for me. And apparently Arteta is giving Nketiah a chance, which I find interesting, is that because we've already got forwards of Martinelli, Lacazette, Aubameyang, and Nketiah himself. Maybe Arteta sees Martinelli as more of a winger and Nketiah as a striker. Seems to be the case. But yeah, it just wasn't really going for him. And yeah, it just seems to be with Arsenal at the moment, we're lacking that ability to create chances. And I think as soon as we find a midfield balance, as soon as Ozil is off the books, I really think we should be trying to bring Ceballos in at one point. He's sitting on the bench. Why aren't you bringing him on? Give him an opportunity because, look, I don't know how good he'll be. He started well at Arsenal. He might be one of those players that, starts well but doesn't really kick on and struggles to adapt with the Premier League. But the position that we're in now with our midfield, we at least got to give him a chance. So I really do think that, at some point we really need to be looking to give Ceballos a go if we're not looking to dip into the transfer market. But defensively, we look a lot better. And although, yes, it was 1-1, I was extremely disappointed in the manner that we conceded. I do think that we will bounce back and there is signs of improvement. I do believe we have to be very patient. And for me to say that is something, because I'm usually quite negative with these things, but when you bring in a manager like Arteta, it is really a long-term strategy and we really need to be patient with him. There is signs of improvement. There was moments of the game where we controlled the ball and we were playing the ball around nicely. But again, it comes down to focus, comes down to mentality, physically. Being physical and physically fit, and mentally we're not all there with our focus just yet. But we move on. We move on to Chelsea on Wednesday, and please keep your eyes peeled for some preview for that game. But thank you for watching my video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and be prepared for some more videos coming up. I will be doing a video on a certain player that's performed brilliantly under Arteta very soon. This is APFC, all Arsenal content, not exclusively so. Take care, guys. Have a wonderful evening.